Good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to get started with a word of prayer. Please bow with me. Father in heaven, we thank you for loving us. We thank you for this day. We thank you for your word that guides us in everything. Father, we pray as we open your word to learn from you that you would help us. Help us to be able to focus. Help us to be able to clear out the craziness of this world. Help us to understand the meaning that you designed in your word. Father, please help us not to add to or take away from it. In Jesus' name, amen. A little bit of housekeeping first of all. This is the last week of the class. This is the last time that you get the horror or privilege, however you want to see it, of me being up here, at least for a little while. I don't know who the next teacher is, but I'm sure they're going to do a fantastic job. So remember, if you're teaching next quarter, it starts next Sunday. So, I want you to think about something. I want you to think about someone that is good at something. Now, it could be anything, it doesn't really matter. But I want you to think of someone that you would consider an expert in their field. As you think about them, I want you to think about them performing their task, their job, whatever it is. It could be something from cooking a dinner to rebuilding an engine, arguing a court case, or performing surgery. Doesn't matter what it is. The point is I want you to think about it. And if you were to watch them perform this task in their field of expertise, you would see them performing a symphony. Multiple things happening at multiple times. I think about someone cooking. Do we have any cooks in here? Anybody call themselves a cook? Does anybody not call themselves a cook? All right, so if you ever watch somebody that is a cook, they have appetizers they're doing over here, side dishes, the main course going on, multiple things going on at the same time. I'm good at two things. I can do two things, anything other than that, and something's going to get burnt. And that's just the way it is. So, but people that are good at doing these different tasks, that are experts, they can do multiple things at the same time because they've done it so many times. They know the time frame and when to start what. And so where everything's done at the right point. To watch this is something truly amazing to see. Do we think God is like this? If an expert in our field can perform these different tasks, to have them all completed at the right time for whatever they're doing, do we think God is the same way? Yes, but 1,000 times better. So if I can do two things at once, God can do an infinite amount of things, all performing them in our different lives with different things going on. Do we expect God to answer prayers this way? So if God is so much greater than we are, and we can only do a small amount of things to perform a task, to have it completed, how much greater is God in answering our prayers? Do you think that God is just answering one prayer when He answers your prayer? So when we ask God to ask God to provide food for us because we're hungry, what do we expect? We expect a cheeseburger to fall out of the sky because we're hungry now. We want it now. That's the way we pray. That's the way we want to be answered. But this is out of character in the way that God does answer prayers and the way that He works. Do you think Paul thought this is how he would go to Rome? As we have gone through the book of Acts, and he's had all of these different experiences knowing that he's going to go to Rome, do you think this is how he thought he would arrive at Rome? Maybe he thought that he would travel with a band of Christians. Do you think that he thought that he would get an armed escort of 470 soldiers to escort him from one city to another, and then another band of soldiers to get him onto this ship, into that ship, to escort him completely free. He had the Roman government pay for it all. Escorted all the way to Rome. I don't think this is something that Paul had in his mind on the way that he was going to serve God. Here, as Paul knew that he was going to go to Rome, he did not see all of the many leaders, kings, all of the different synagogues that he would preach at, all the different other people, the other prisoners, the other soldiers, all these other people that he would touch during his trip to Rome. God was working a masterpiece, a symphony in Paul's life. It wasn't just a one-off, you're going to Rome. God's primary objective was to send Paul to Rome, yes, just like your primary objective might be to make a turkey for dinner. But just like we would have several other things going on all at the same time, God so much more, thousands of times more, has multiple things happening all at the same time that we are completely oblivious to. It's not possible for us to understand the complexity in all the things that God has going on. God used Paul to make snacks, appetizers, and side dishes, and desserts all at the same time. So, what is stopping God from using us like He used Paul? Why does God not use us the way He used Paul? Sir? Absolutely. It's only us. Paul made himself available. He allowed God to use him. We're going to be in Acts 27 and 28. If we can go ahead and turn there. And if I can get a reader for verses 1 through 12, please.
And when it was decided that we should sail to Italy, they delivered Paul and some other prisoners to one named Julius, a centurion of the Augustan regiment. So entering a ship of Adramyttium, we put to sea, meaning to sail along the coast of Asia. Aristarchus, a Macedonian of Thessalonica, was with us. And the next day we landed at Sidon, and Julius treated Paul kindly and gave him liberty to go to his friends to receive care. When we had put to sea from there, we sailed under the shelter of Cyprus because the winds were contrary. And when we had sailed over the sea which is all Cilicia and Pamphylia, we came to Myra, a city in Lycia. There the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing to Italy, and he put us on board. When we had sailed slowly many days and arrived with difficulty at Cnidus, the wind was not permitting us to proceed, and we sailed under the shelter of Crete, all Salome. Passing it with difficulty, we came to a place called Fair Havens, near the lake of Lasea. Now when much time had been spent and sailing was now dangerous because the fast was already past, Paul advised him, saying, Men, I perceive that this voyage will end in disaster and much loss, not only with the cargo and ship, but also our lives. Nevertheless, the centurion was more persuaded by the helmsman and the owner of the ship than by the things spoken by Paul. And because the harbor was not suitable to winter in, the majority advised to sail there also, if by any means they could reach Phoenix, a harbor of Crete, opening toward the southwest and northwest, and winter there.
Thank you, Chad. All right, I want you to think of one of your storms in life, one of you can call it trials, one of the difficult parts in your life. Maybe it's right now, maybe it's happened in the past, but I want you to think about one of those difficult times in your life. When you're in the middle of the storm, how hard is it to see God? When you got when you have everything going on around you, the wind, the rain, whatever your storm has, how hard is it at that moment to stay focused on God? It's very hard. It's very difficult. How hard is it to be able to focus on what God has put you in the moment? How to comprehend that? Why has God allowed this to happen to me? What is God's purpose for this in my life right now? What am I supposed to do? Who am I supposed to talk to? How do you get from the storm to focused on that? It's not a natural thing to be able to focus on. It's not a natural thing to be able to focus on. I would put it that it is only possible through practice, through prayer, through times when you're not in the storm. Everybody that's ever played any sport knows you practice before the game. You practice for when the game happens, for when you are in the game. This happens with everything. You don't send your military out there unless you have equipped them, unless you have trained them. You don't send your players out there to play against someone else if they've never practiced. The way that you are able to focus on God in the midst of the craziness of life is through the calm times, through the easy times. There are easy times. Sometimes there's not as many easy times as we'd like, but there are. Yes, ma'am.
I think you have to have your faith. That's what gets you through your storms. You can do it. You can practice. You can do a lot of things. But if you don't believe and you don't trust in God, then you're lost. You have nothing to hold on to.
How well does that faith hold up when you only pull it out during those storms, though? It's something that I'm sure you and many others here, it's not something that you all of a sudden, now I'm going to be a Christian. Now I'm going to believe in God. It's something that you've worked on for years. Yes, sir.
I think we also, like Paul gave to the captain of the ship, he gave him a warning that we shouldn't do this. I think we also have to heed those warnings. And the Bible's full of warning signs for us. And, if we choose to ignore it, we choose to ignore the dangers of those warnings that are trying to protect us against. All the faith in the world is not going to shield you from the consequences.
Very true. So, what makes it easier? Practical application. When you're in that storm, what helps you to not see the storm, but to see the souls around you? To be able to focus on God. What is the help that we can offer, that the Bible offers?
This world is temporary.
Very good. I think it is the Bible. That is the help when we know the Bible, that brings to our memory all these different Bible verses that we've heard of, that this life is but a vapor and that God will never leave you nor forsake you. All of these things is what helps you through these times to know that God, the God of creation, loves you, cares about you, and is going to help you through this. Yes, sir.
Josh, we'll go to Psalms 119. That's a good place to start. Kind of like our 911. When you have problems, you call 911. There's an emergency. Same thing in our life. We have things like this happen. Go to the Psalms, especially 119.
Absolutely. In verse 2, Aristarchus was one of Paul's traveling companions. we see that back in Acts 19. Paul's boat trip, so Paul was not by himself. He had other brethren with him. Paul's boat trip starts at Caesarea in Acts 25. And then he has a very long trip. As we go through this, you can turn to the back of your maps, the back of your Bible, to the maps if you have them. And you can just follow along as he goes through all of this this trip. Let's see. In verse 3, the next day we landed in Sidon, and Julius treated Paul kindly and gave him liberty to go to his friends and receive care. And when he had put to sea from there, we sailed under the shelter of Cyprus because the winds were contrary. And when we had sailed over the seas, which is off Cilicia and Pamphylia, we came to Myra, the city of Lycia. There the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing to Italy and put us on board. When we had sailed slowly many days and arrived with difficulty off Cnidus, the winds not permitting us to proceed, we sailed under the shelter of Crete off Salmone. Passing it with difficulty, we came to a place called Fair Havens near the city of Lasea. This was they didn't have a motorboat here. They didn't have a speedboat. This was a sailboat. This would have been just a terrible trip. You're in rough water, waves that are contrary to you, sailing slowly. This would have been miserable, and I'm sure completely not how Paul thought he was going to go to Rome. Have you ever had someone give you advice on a subject that was outside of their field of expertise? In verse 9 through 12, now when much time had been spent, and the sailing was now dangerous because of the fast was already over, Paul advised them, saying, Men, I perceive that the voyage will end in disaster and much loss, not only of the cargo and ship, but also of our lives. Nevertheless, the centurion was more persuaded by the helmsman and the owner of the ship than by the things spoken by Paul. And because the harbor was not suitable to winter in, the majority advised to set sail from there also, if by any means they could reach Phoenix, a harbor of Crete, opening towards the southwest and the northwest, and winter there. If you've ever had somebody give you advice that is outside of their field of expertise, maybe it is your field of expertise, how much weight do you give that advice? This does not surprise me at all that the centurion would not have listened to Paul. Paul is a religious person to this soldier. He does not know that he is a man of God yet. And we'll see how that changes. But at this point, the centurion does not have any reason to listen to Paul. He's going to listen to the captain of the ship, the helmsman, and also the owner of the ship. And he's going to take the advice of the expertise. All right, so in verse 8, they're currently at Fair Haven, and they are to go to Phoenix. I believe that's right. Yeah. All right, so this is about 40 miles from my expert map skills. I figured out this is about 40 miles. This should this should be a day's trip. So, as we go through this next section, it keeps going through my head over and over again about just sit right back and you'll hear a tale of a faithful ship. Does anybody know where I'm going with this? I mean, if this does not seem like Gilligan's Island here, they're about to head out on this short little trip, and it shouldn't be but a day's trip. And oh, how things change for them. If I can get somebody else to read verses 13 through 19, please.
When the south wind blew soft, its opposing head, its hand and desire could not see itself close by it. Not long after, its tempestuous headwind rose called Euroclydon. So when the ship was caught, it could not have been in to let her dry. Running under the shelter of an island called Cora, we secured the ship with good place. When they had taken it on board, with these cables to put it to the shore, fearing lest they should run aground on the silver sand, they struck so that the ship was driven. And because we were exceedingly tempest-tossed, the next day they were not on the ship. On the third day, the cruise ships tackled overboard their own mates.
Thank you. When you're in a room with no light, not just dim light, but with no light, you can turn on the smallest little light and you can see it. It does not take, the darker the room is, the smaller the light stands out. Here they had no hope. Hope was gone. It was not even, the seasoned sailors, they had lost hope. And Paul gives them hope. Um, 27 through 32. Now when the 14th night had come, and we were driven up and down the Adriatic Sea, about midnight the sailors sensed that they were drawing near some land, and they took soundings and found it to be 20 fathoms. And when they had gone a little further, they took soundings again and found that to be 15 fathoms. Then, fearing lest they should run aground on the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for day to come. And the sailors were seeking to escape from the ship. And when they had let down the skiff into the sea, under pretense of putting off anchors from the prow, Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, "Unless these men stay in the ship, you cannot be saved." Then the sailors cut away the ropes and the skiff and let it off to sea, let it fall off. And as day was about to dawn, Paul implored them all to take some food. Today is the 14th day you have waited and continued without food and eaten nothing. Therefore, I urge you to take nourishment, for this is your survival, since not a hair will fall from the head of any of you. And when he had said these things, I read too far. I'm sorry. I said through 32. Notice the power shift. So before, when Paul had offered a suggestion to the centurion, he did not want to listen to him. He listened to the captain and the owner of the ship. And now, when all hope's lost, now they just cut loose their lifeboat and let it go out into the sea. This is a huge power shift. Now, the sailors, the centurion's not listening to them at all. Now they're listening to Paul. Paul unites everyone after this. After he has the attention of not only the centurion, not only the soldiers, not only the the captain and the owners, of the salesmen. He has everyone's attention now. He offers them hope. He wants to unite them. All right, verses 37 through 40. In all were 276 persons on the ship. So when they had eaten enough, they lightened the ship and threw out the wheat into the sea. When it was day, they did not recognize the land, but they observed a bay with a beach, on which they planned to run the ship if possible. And they let go the anchors and left them in the sea, meanwhile loosening the rudder ropes, and they hoist the mainsail to the wind and made for shore. Here they cast off all doubt. They are going forward. They are not going to second guess this. This is their direction. This is their what they're going to do. And they're not going to be steered another way. They can't go back now. They've gotten rid of their anchors. They've loosened the rudder and they hoisted the mainsail, and now they're heading towards the beach. They are wholeheartedly depending on what Paul has told them. Now that they are trusting in God, everything will be all right. Right? Now that they have completely trusted in God, everything's going to be great. Is that the way that it works? What do you trust in God for? So often, I will pray for the safety, the health of my family, wanting for the physical things to be answered. What do you trust in God for?
Everything.
I think, go ahead.
Going back to his sermon on Mars Hill. In him we live, we move, we have our very being. He gives life and breath to all. That's one of those things when you think about it just happens automatically. But it happens because God has allowed it.
Mm-hmm.
But we're pretty wealthy. I don't mean like we're all millionaires, but in comparison to the rest of the world, we're wealthy. We do things, we go out to work, we earn a living. We sit and think, I did that. The correct thought according to this, and what we're looking at James 4, is God has allowed this to happen for me.
You think it's wrong to ask for safety or health?
No, but it doesn't mean you're going to get safety
Hmm.
one. I don't know, I heard someone say a while back, the Lord did not come to heal us from our affliction, but to save our souls. We guarantee we're going to be saved. We cannot guarantee we're going to be spared sickness, disease, or injuries, or anything like that.
We trust him and know what's best for us.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
I think praying for safety and health is crucial, but it doesn't relieve us from our, we can't just sit there and wait.
Mm.
We can't just sit there and say, okay, this is all on God. God does expect us to do things according to his will to protect ourselves. It's not relying on God, but it's also not just completely abdicating your own responsibility to do the right thing.
We still have free will. Absolutely. I think out of all the prayers ever asked to God, and I have no way to know this, I would imagine that prayers for health and safety are probably some of the most. I don't think it's wrong to ask for these things. I think that God gives us physical bodies that are mortal so that we will rely on Him. Verses 41 and 42. But striking a place where two seas meet, they ran the ship aground, and the plow stuck fast and remained immovable. But the stern was being broken up by the violence of the waves. And the soldiers' plan was to kill the prisoners, lest any of them should swim away and escape. Here, Paul is constantly getting knocked down. Constantly. Every time that Paul is serving God, he constantly comes into some conflict. Somebody's trying to kill him. Somebody's trying to beat him. Somebody's doing something to him. He's constantly getting knocked down. And Paul rises to the occasion. He continues to serve God. Paul, during this, is still being refined. Each one of these tasks, each one of these trials that Paul goes through, every time that he makes it through there with his faith intact, it's strengthening him. It's allowing him to become a better servant of God. (43 and 44). But the centurion, wanting to save Paul, kept them from their purpose and commanded that those who could swim should jump overboard first and get to land, and the rest, some on boards and some on parts of the ship. And so it was that all escaped safely to land. Do you think the closer that you get to God, or the more you serve Him, the more you'll be tested? You think it's easier to go through life with or without God? Well, that depends on how you look at it, doesn't it? That depends on how you look at it. What is your end result?
As far as not having to work at it now, you want to go through life and work to be who you know you got to be. If you believe in God, you want to get there. It's going to take work. It's going to be adversity. And I think the devil wants those who are successful to get there. So he's going to work on it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It depends on how you look at it. If you're looking at life as this is it, there's nothing else, there's no heaven, there's no hell, there's no God, then yeah, if you're not going to serve God, then it's going to be a lot easier for you. But if you can look at the world around you, if you can conclude from your own eyes that this did not happen on its own, and you recognize that there is a Creator, and then you can look through history and you can see that there's a God and He has a plan for us. He wants us to be with Him. Then, yeah, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult, but it's going to be easier than going to hell. So, yes, sir.
I've never met an older person in my life that came out and said that they have regretted being a Christian their whole life. I have met many of them, and I wish I had never started drinking. I wish I had never, and they have all kinds of regrets that have taken them away from the Lord. But I've never met one that said, yeah, they respect that.
Yet the end result of that life of doing whatever you want will not only take you away from the Lord, but it'll alienate you from family, from friends, will cause you all kinds of heartache. God knows what He's doing. God knows what He's told us. Yes, sir.
So, adding on to what Larry said, I think, a lot of, we're all going to struggle. When you believe in God or you hope, something better when this life is over. You don't have that hope, though. Dealing with the struggles of this life are near impossible. So as Christians, we're to have that hope that no matter what I have to deal with here, this isn't the best it's ever going to be. I've got a home waiting for me in heaven, and that's what my reward is going to be, no matter how easy or how hard it is while I'm here on this earth.
People that don't believe in God, I don't know, maybe they're out there, but I don't know of any that have actively searched for answers and have come up not believing in God. There's so much information out there. It's so easily accessible that if you want to know, if you desire and you try, you don't even have to try that hard. You'll come to God. You'll find the answers. Continuing on, Acts 28, if I can get somebody to read 1 through 10, please. Thank you. The passage about the snake. All right, so this goes back, if you look over in Mark 16, verse 18. Here's Jesus talking. They will take up serpents and they will drink anything, and if they drink anything deadly, it will by no means hurt them. They will lay hands on the sick and they will recover. So here, I wonder if Paul thought about this. If he thought back to this passage, if he knew of this passage. I don't know. But here, again, Paul is being tested. I think about the natives here. I think about the natives. And they see this guy, Paul, and he's a prisoner. And he just went through a shipwreck, and he survives. He makes it. He's here on land, and now he just gets bit by a viper. Very poisonous snake. Maybe I just wonder how this went. Because if I was bit by a snake, I mean, I'm not scared of snakes, but if one's going to bite me and like hang off my arm, I don't know that I'm just going to shake it off into the fire. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I just think about the people that are watching this and what they must be thinking. It's like, this guy must be terrible that here he survives a shipwreck and then he gets bit by a snake. It's like, this guy must deserve to die. And I could see two of them standing over next to each other. All right, he just got bit by a snake. Is that him sweating? Is he sweating here? Is he swelling up? No, that's just rain. That's just rain. I wonder if he's going to swell. Does he look dizzy? Does he what's going on? Just waiting on him to fall over, something to happen, because he just got bit by a viper. I mean, the common thing is, well, this guy's going to die. But it's all the little side notes in the Bible that I wish I could like just sit there and kind of be a part of to see what happened. But that's just me. So what is your limit for serving God? Would you get snake bit? I know some people that would have a big problem with this. They would. Snake bits. That's like top of the list there. That's, I don't know. That's pushing it. But what's your limit for serving God? Do we have a limit? Do we try not to have a limit? It's hard for us to go knock on doors of strangers, let alone go to another country and get snake bit. What is your limit for serving God? All right, Paul's final journey, verses 11 through 16. If somebody can read that for me, please.
After 3 months, we sailed in Alexandrian ship, whose figurehead was the twin brothers, which had wintered at the island, and landed at Syracuse. We stayed 3 days. From there, we circled around and reached Rhegium, and after 1 day south of Mytilene, the next day we came to Philippi, where we found brethren and were invited to stay with them 7 days. And so we went toward Rome. There, the brethren heard about us. They came to meet us as far as Appii-Forum and Bereans. When Paul saw them, thanked God and took courage. Now when we came to Rome, the centurion delivered prisoners to the captain guard. Paul was permitted to dwell by himself with the soldier who guarded him.
Thank you. Think how far Paul's come from being escorted by 470 soldiers to now being permitted to just hang out with this one guy that's going to be in charge of him in his own place. I mean, there's been a huge trust that's been developed between him and the centurion. I would imagine so. I mean, think of all the stuff that centurion's seen. He's seen people being healed. He's seen all of their lives being saved from the shipwreck. I'm sure it doesn't tell us, but I hope that through all these things, that some of these other prisoners, some of these sailors, and the centurion, they would have come to know God as well. Now that Paul has reached Rome, he thanks God for the brethren. I would imagine, now he had some brethren with him, but I would imagine arriving at your destination, seeing some Christians, this had to be the highlight of his trip. He's finally here. All right, so in 17 through 20, how much time we got left? Oh, we're out of time. Real quick, 17 through 20, Paul lays his cards on the table here. And it came to pass after 3 days that Paul called the leaders and the Jews together, so when they had come together, he said to them, Men and brethren, though I have done nothing against our people or the customs of our fathers, yet I was delivered as a prisoner from Jerusalem into the hands of the Romans, who, when they had examined me, wanted to let me go, because there was no cause for putting me to death. But when the Jews spoke against it, I was compelled to appeal to Caesar. Not that I had anything in which to accuse my nation. For this reason, therefore, I have called you to see to you and speak with you, because for the hope of Israel I am bound with these chains. Here Paul's laying his cards on the table, explaining to them why he's come. Later on, they tell him, hey, we haven't heard why you're here, why you're being a prisoner or anything, but we do know that this Jesus that you're preaching is being spoken of everywhere, and they want to hear more about it. Thank y'all for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with y'all.